Welcome back, everybody. Welcome to Pass the Tots. I am your host, Mike Craig from Nutrislice, and super thrilled today. We have with us Joel Onyshuk from Unisyn. Joel, you are an expert in all things frontline service employees. And today we're going to get the state of the union. We're going to figure out, how they're motivated, how we can do a better job for them, how we can create better employee experiences, especially as it relates to morale and just motivation to keep doing difficult things as we're kind of spinning out of the pandemic. Joel, thank you for being here today, good sir.
Excited to do it. I know I have my own podcast. I never get to be on this side of the microphone. So I'm always asking questions, having to come up with the topics. I get to sit back and relax and let you guide us all the way. So I'm happy to be here and always fun to see your face.
Joel, we met, a few months ago at SHFM. You were there, won some awards, fascinating stuff. You are the expert on, frontline service employees and everything that they go through. And it feels like your passion and your mission is to create better experiences for them. We have in our audience, managers and leaders where there's just hundreds and thousands of frontline employees, and everyone is figuring out, like, what can I do to be better? How can I help them? I'm so excited to have you today.
Well, yeah, I'm excited about it. I mean, these are topics that I am just so passionate about and love to discuss. And so any opportunity I have to go on about these sort of things, I'm happy to take it.
Well, let's just dive right in. So, spinning out of the pandemic, what is the state of the union? Like, where are we at? How are we doing with employees and employee culture, and especially as it relates to those that, that represent the brand to our consumers?
Well, it's interesting. I think, obviously a lot of strides have been made to address a lot of the changes. I mean, the gig economy is blowing up. Millennials, especially Gen Z employees, don't like traditional working hours. They don't like traditional working rules. They don't like to be kept in a box. They want flexibility and creativity, and they want to kind of own their career path. They want to have clarity on what it means to be, taking the next step in their organizations. They don't like ambiguity. There's an outgoing workforce of older employees who have kind of done things a certain way. And as you get the Gen X employees beginning to take over high-level leadership roles, millennials taking over high leadership roles, I think it's going to be really interesting to see the dynamic shift from some of the legacy ways of leadership to some of the new ways. And I think we're still learning what those new ways are going to have to be. What's interesting is a lot of times we like to rely on what our employees tell us they want from employee surveys or things like that. And I will talk about this later on, I'm sure, but I think we need to get back to the basics on what do human beings need, and are we meeting those needs as organizations, as employers, first and foremost? Because a lot of times I think it's a mistake to believe we're all self-aware enough to know what we actually need. We tend to live right here, what I want right now. Yeah. And I think a lot of times as an older millennial, I'll represent my age bracket, millennials or Gen Zs, a lot of times we are too short-sighted and don't think long-term enough. And so it'll be interesting to see how we navigate that challenge.
So pause here. So we just did an employee survey, calculating our NPS, figuring out what we need to do better and change. We get the results that comes back. We're like, all right, double down here. This is good. Maybe we need to make some adjustments here. And you're saying, like, hey, that's great, but probably, to navigate successfully in the future, it's not so much employees telling employers what to do or what they need, but really just organizations understanding the basic needs of humans in general, and then being able to provide those.
Well, I think so, because we're so short-sighted, right? I mean, like, if you ask me, what do you want right now? How easy would it be as an employee to say more money? Of course I want more money, right? I have this job because I make money. And for a lot of frontline jobs, they're not super high paid, right? They're lower paid jobs. They don't have the greatest benefits, if any. There's a stressor of schedules that might be kind of crazy and might collide with family life, or weird overtime hours or overnight shifts and things like that. So what's going to be front of mind for me a lot of times are very intuitive, like short-term, immediate needs now, which shouldn't be ignored for
Yeah.
sure. I mean, like, if I need to make more money to survive, then I need to make more money to survive. And if I'm telling you as my employer that that's something I need and you don't meet it, either I'm going to suck it up and stick it out because I don't have any other option, or I'm going to find another company that does pay me more. But if we get past those basic levels of like, I need this right now, this is an immediate human need to just survive. What's everything that's after that, after physiological and like safety level needs, I think people generally aren't even self-aware enough to know what they need, right? I'm not
Yeah.
thinking about that a lot of times when you ask me that question. And so placing that responsibility on an employee to tell me what you need, sometimes this isn't even the right way to go about it because they're not even aware of what they need at that level.
I found that to be true. I think early on in the days of Nutrislice, people would say, hey, we actually just need more money. And so we'd bump their salary. 2 months later, they come back and they're like, we're leaving. It really wasn't about the money. And I was like, wait a minute, you just told me it was the money. And it's not the money.
Right. Right. Exactly.
And I don't want to say it's not a factor. It's part of the equation for sure. But I think you're hitting a point that there's like some underlying needs, and employees may not always recognize and know the things that they need in order to be fulfilled.
Well, and think about what's the Henry Ford quote? I'm going to bastardize this, but like if Henry Ford said something like, "If I gave the people what they wanted, I would have given them a faster horse."
Yeah, yeah.
They weren't even thinking about cars, engines, wheels, like what a vehicle, right? Like I'm not even in that headspace. So he had to elevate himself out of that thought process and actually critically think about what people actually needed at an innovative next level thinking perspective, and not just capitulate to the immediate desires or demands of the people around, because again, they weren't the ones who were going to innovate, so they're going to default to a certain level of thinking, and sometimes that's not the right way to go about it.
Sure. Well, let's jump in there then. So like this dynamic shift, what are you discovering? What are you seeing? What do employees need?
Well, it's funny because the basic human needs of people have never changed, right? The way I have encapsulated everything has been most recently, people need to love what they do. They need to love how they do it. They need to love the people they do it with. And they need to be loved by the people they do it with. So let's break that down, right? I need to love what I do. And that's going to come down to, it being something I'm passionate about, something that I get value out of doing, something that brings me internal satisfaction and self-worth and an ego boost. And these things can be innate in the job itself, and it could also be innate in the culture within which I do it, right? And then the how we do it, right? I can enjoy racing cars, but I might not love racing cars in the desert. Might be too hot, right? So I have to love what I do, but I also have to love how it's done. And so Gen Z employees, for example, they want significant flexibility. Maybe I love to clean the Maple Grove Community Center, where I was my first job ever in Minnesota growing up. I was 16 years old. Maybe I love to clean. I did. I actually loved that job. I look back and I think of it very fondly. But maybe I don't want to do it when you want me to do it. Right. And unfortunately or fortunately, I'm not sure what the answer is yet. But one of those, like, it's the reality that Gen Z employees want flexibility in how they do the job that they've been asked to do. So I might like how I do it, but I also need to like how I do what I do. Then, of course, I need to love the people I do it with. There needs to be a strong community, a strong culture, a strong relationship between me and others who I do it alongside. And it needs to be two-way, right? They need to love me as well. I need to feel known, understood, appreciated, valued for what I offer innately as a human being, not just what I offer as a job, as a cog in the overall machine. So I think of those things, those four things, they need to all exist. And if one of them is missing, you're probably in a precarious position where you might start losing people. If more than one's missing, you're in trouble. And that's unfortunately the reality, I think, for a lot of service industry frontline employers, is that at least one of those isn't being met pretty regularly right now.
Which one do you have a sense, or it probably varies across the board, but
yeah, I think the jobs haven't changed, right? So like what I do is pretty static, right? I mean, if I'm cleaning rooms, if I'm serving food, if I'm doing these service industry jobs, like I'm still showing up because I, to a certain degree, want to do this job. perhaps. So I think that's kind of stagnant. I think it's kind of the same. How we do it is probably beginning to change. Like, I love how I do it. I mean, the gig economy exists for a reason, right? Uber, I drive when I want to drive. I drive who I want to drive. I drive, kind of on my own schedule. And so, that is showing up now in a variety of really innovative mobile apps and services out there to allow Gen Z employees to take control of, I'm a server, but I want to take hours that I want. So I can serve at this restaurant, and this restaurant, and this restaurant. So that's really interesting. But I think the one that I just keep coming back to this, and people kind of rag on me. They're like, you're overthinking this, or you're putting too much weight on it. I don't think it's wrong. Is I think that employers, especially following the pandemic, when there was less staff than ever, when organizations had downsized and middle management was squeezed, and there wasn't enough time, not enough heads to go out and do different roles, I think the quality of relationships between managers and employees are more stretched and strained than ever. I think there's less time to positively create strong, authentic relationships with managers and leaders and their staff. And I think it's become two-way. I think because of that, the frontline employees are no longer emotionally, relationally tied to anyone either. And they say, I am replaceable. And because I'm replaceable, you're replaceable. So I'm going to go work somewhere else next week.
Yeah.
So I think we're really missing those last two. I love who I work with, and they love me. There are 5 critical behaviors that I have kind of distilled down over my career that have to exist to have a strong frontline team culture. And those would be purpose, vulnerability, safety, autonomy, and a barrier-free workplace. And I'll summarize those quickly. Purpose, just, I know my purpose. I know what the company's all about. We're aligned in purpose. I want to be here because I see myself as contributing to a larger thing than myself. And that this thing is valuable to me. There's a certain purpose there. Safety and vulnerability are sort of close, but that throughout creating a vulnerable place where leaders demonstrate vulnerability, leaders demonstrate they don't always have it all together. They own their mistakes. They own that they're imperfect, creates the opportunity for others to do the same. And that ultimately creates an environment of safety where we're safe to innovate. We're safe to try new things. We're safe to fail. We're safe to put our necks out on the line to do something that was a little crazy that would service the customer a little better. And then that ultimately creates an ownership mentality and autonomy in organizations where they are these frontline associates are no longer being told what to do and they're just following blind orders. They're now thinking of better ways to do it. They're thinking of better ways to serve the client and ideating on their own. And ultimately then the managers can come in and remove the barriers for them to be successful. So I think about the criticality of all that stuff is super relational. I can't do any of those things without a solid relationship with me and my boss, because then I'm on my own and I don't have that direction.
Yeah. I some follow-up questions here. This is beautiful. And this is almost going to turn into a therapeutic thing for me as at Nutrislice. So let's say I am really good at, and I maybe over-index around purpose. And so when new employees come in, my focus is to really hit home, like, hey, this is what we do, and this is what we want you to do. We want to create these meaningful experience for our guests. And you're a frontline service worker. You're the one who has the brand, representing, and take it and go. And I'm really good. Maybe I over-index on giving them the autonomy and the flexibility to do it. Where, what are some potential concerns that I might bump into or challenges if those are the things I'm really, really great at? What are the blind spots that I may be missing if that's all I can do for a group?
2 things stand out. I mean, one is you might be excited about those things, but is that purpose aligned with the purpose of your employee?
Yeah.
Right. And here's what I mean by that. I mean, if I am coming in and I probably, similar to a previous conversation a few minutes ago, I haven't really even thought kind of like to the next level yet. I think really basic kind of now. I haven't even thought about
a job and this one pays well. So
yeah, exactly.
Right.
I haven't put thought into my purpose. What's my purpose? I don't know what my purpose is. I need to work. I need to go home. I need to love my kids. I need to come back to work. Like my purpose. And so you might wax poetic about your purpose and your company's purpose, but a lot of times people haven't even thought about their own. And where is the intersection between what I'm excited about, what gets me going, why I exist, and how that can enable your business to be successful, right? And
Yeah,
if I can find a marriage between an intersection of what I am passionate about and what this business needs to do, that is where purpose and purpose meet, and where you can create a really strong alignment where they can see that their purpose actually enables the broader purpose. And now I feel like I'm somewhere that I can actually make a difference. So I think
absolutely.
if that link isn't made, you miss out sometimes on an opportunity to make it like authentic, you know?
Yeah, yeah, for sure. And so there almost needs to be discovery, and maybe that can get captured in the interview process. Likely not, though. How best do employees or employers go about finding the unique purposes and the motivations of their employees?
So here's a really fun story. So I have the podcast that I do, the Frontline
Yeah,
Industry podcast, and we had a guest on. Her name is Mary Miller, and she runs a company. She actually has handed it to the next generation called Jancoa. They're a cleaning business out of Ohio,
cool.
and they have hundreds of employees. They're not massive, but they're not small.
Yeah,
And early on, they, even before pandemic stuff, and we're talking like decades ago, realized that there was a shift of frontline workers and what motivated them, and the retention challenges and engagement challenges were even manifesting long ago. And so they set out to really radically change the way they approached creating a strong culture for the organization. And so they created what they ultimately called the dream manager position. And it was literally a job that an individual held. And during, and for their employees, it was that person's job to understand, what is it that Mike is all about? What are you trying to accomplish in your life? And you're like, and I probably haven't been challenged about this before. So, okay, I got to think about this. And what I really would love to do is I'm a second generation immigrant, and I would love to be the first person in my family to go to college. Awesome. Awesome. Then that is our goal too. Like, we are mutually aligned. We will provide you anything we can within our means to help you meet that dream, right? And so now we're not talking about, well, did you clean to the expectations? Did you follow the checklist? Did you do that? No, we're talking about every time we meet, or quarterly or once a year, we're talking about how are we edging closer to you making your dream come true, and us being a vehicle that gets you there. And if you need to make more money in order to save up to go to college, or you're trying to buy your first home and you need to be able to make this amount of money per hour, what is the next job we can offer you, and how can you see a pathway to achieving it in a certain time period, and us partner with you to make that a reality? And so it becomes that alignment of their purpose and our purpose, finding that mutual ground.
yeah, that's awesome. That's incredibly motivating. A dream manager.
It's a really neat thing. It's a book on the same title that was written, and a lot of it was based on what Mary Miller and her family
What she
had
was
done.
doing.
So look it up. It's inspiring stuff.
That's fascinating. Well, I'm thinking. Okay, so I'm thinking if let's assume I'm a executive director at a college, and we've
Okay.
got 5 different uh, feeding locations with tens, hundreds of frontline service employees,
Mm-hmm.
and let's just say 90-95% of these employees are actual students themselves. We're pulling from the university to work for us. uh, the idea of a dream manager is really exciting, but I don't know
Sure.
if I can like scale that out, knowing that like there's going to be rapid or constant turnover. I'm not
Yeah.
necessarily recruiting these employees and thinking I'm going to have them for a significant amount of time. How
Right.
can I still, despite that obstacle, still create some meaningful experience there?
Yeah. So again, it's still tied to what the greater purpose is, right? Like, why do we do what we do? And then I think it comes down to a couple things. There are 3 things in my experience that have to happen at daily level, for sure, at least weekly, but ideally daily, with every employee in a service industry organization. And the first one is, we have to have our daily team meeting, our daily team huddle, pre-service briefing, whatever you want to call it. A lot of organizations call it other things like toolbox talks or whatever it may be. It has to happen. Like, there has to be communication from a leader to the staff about what's important today. What are we focusing on? Why is that thing important? What's your role in making it happen? But just as important as having the meeting is that two other things have to happen in that meeting as well. And those two things are, first, we have to have an employee recognized in front of their peers. Pragmatically speaking, it has to be something that occurs consistently, and the recognition has to be something that's in relation to something that matters to the organization, right? So if our goal is to have a great customer experience and to improve the way our customer reviews come back, then how did we recognize someone today for something that contributed to that very thing? If our goal is revenue increase, how do I recognize Mike for the thing he did yesterday that led to a 10% revenue increase? But everything we do has to be tied to that obsession as an organization, and then recognizing an employee in front of their peers for doing something that helped us get there, right? So it has to be a focused recognition. Thirdly, so the meeting happened, and in that meeting, we at least recognized someone in front of their peers for doing something meaningful that helped us achieve our goal. Thirdly, did we collect ideas from the group on how we could be better? So, Mike, you show up week after week to these meetings, and today you raise your hand and say, you know what? Yesterday we had a huge line of people, and it seemed to go really slow for our order taking. What if we just had someone on staff going out there like a Chick-fil-A and getting orders ahead of time and informing the kitchen on kind of what's coming so we could make some food in advance?
Line
Mike, that's a
busting.
great idea. Why don't you try that today and see how it goes? Tomorrow you come back in, and not only were you now you want to see this work because it was your idea,
Yeah,
right?
right. Now
And now
I'm
you're
invested.
invested. Yeah, but now tomorrow comes in and I go, you know what, Mike? That worked like a charm. We served 10% more people yesterday than we normally do. Fantastic work. Now, I've gotten your idea. We've tried it. You feel valued because of that alone. But then also, I'm recognizing you in front of your peers for that very idea. Now, what naturally happens is everyone's looking around going, well, I got ideas.
I got ideas.
I want to be recognized. Mike looks, I mean, that wasn't that great of an idea, right? I got some great ideas too. I want to share and so we begin to harness the ideas from our people to make ourselves better, but also recognizing them for those ideas and for the ways they contribute along the way. So those three things have to happen. You have to have the meeting, you have to recognize, and you have to get ideas. And if you do
Totally,
those
yeah.
three things alone, I think it's a really pragmatic way to still be able to change a culture in an organization, like you mentioned.
I mean, I love it, right? Because I think it hits, in this daily huddle, I think the recognition helps kind of meet that, who you're doing it with. And it's two-way, right? Like you feel a camaraderie, a connection. There's care. People are known and they're appreciated. They're bringing their best versions of themselves. When they do generate ideas, it's that autonomy and the flexibility of like, hey, I have a say in how we're doing things. And as soon as I get that investment, then I really care about what I'm doing today. This is
Right.
totally possible. This huddle, I mean, how long does it need to last? What's your best practice there?
10 minutes? I mean, this isn't a big deal, right? I mean, in fact, so Toyota years ago began to, as part of their Toyota production system, they have daily huddles, right? And their huddles are actually twice per shift. And if you look at scale, it costs them. I mean, this is intra shift. This isn't before the shift. People are clocked in. People are on the on company dime here, and they're pulling people off the line in a highly optimized, exceedingly expensive manufacturing operation.
Yeah.
It costs them millions of dollars a day to do these huddles at scale. And yet they know if they don't do it, it's going to cost them even more. And
Right.
so, these have to happen, and they have to happen daily, and it doesn't have to take that long. And you do it before the shift begins when people start walking in. It could be, a few minutes after, they come in. It could be during their lunch break. Do it at some point. It's got to happen. And you have to make a commitment that no matter what, you are going to have that happen each day.
Awesome. Do you see this in food service? Is it out there?
Oh, yeah. I mean, food service is one of the most prevalent organizations when it comes to daily huddles. I mean, it's a best practice for sure. The restaurants I've worked with, the food service organizations, Aramark and others that I've worked with. I mean, it is something that is ubiquitous, whether you are a hotel, whether you are a restaurant, whether you are, in any other service industry capacity, healthcare, in a hospital, daily roundings. It's a best practice in virtually every service organization, or they know it should be, and they don't have a mechanism to keep themselves accountable to do it.
How much training? If I was the team lead and I'm leading a huddle, what kind of training do I need to get? What recommendations do you have if I'm the one, maybe responsible for this huddle?
Yeah, no. So this is a whole can of worms, because my recommendation is probably a lot more than people would want to do. And it's not because the huddle's difficult. It's because leadership is difficult.
Yeah.
It's because the difference between a manager and a leader is actually sizable, right? They're not synonyms. And so what I'd like to have happen is that organizations double down on their training programs and spend more money on leadership and development training than just onboarding and like bare bones training to how do I, close a till? How do I open the store? How do I do the things that, manage a P&L?
You're ready to be a manager.
You're a manager. Good luck. It's like, where did the leadership skills come in here? What does it look like to encourage and recognize and promote ideas, all these things we just talked about. But at a very practical level, if I don't have time, if I'm not going to do that, which I hope people do, what's the minimum you need? And I think you look at a lot of these frontline managers, they're 24 years old.
Yeah.
They've never had a leadership position before. They've never been managers before. This is their first time they've been promoted into a place where they manage people. And so what are they desperate for? They're desperate for direction. They're desperate for the talk track. Just tell me what to say, right? And it's not quite that simple. We can't just regurgitate what everyone else says and call it good. But the three things we just talked about, have the huddle, recognize someone specifically for something that was important, and get some ideas from the team, that may seem simple. It's not when you're 24 years old and it's your first management position.
Yeah.
And following up on that, it's even harder. And so, what we've brought, for example, at Unisyn, and this is how we ended up meeting at SHFM in Denver, was the organization we founded was to, in part, and a small part of it, create the daily cadence and accountability and transparency for that daily activity of the daily huddle, so that the right leaders at the right time could talk about the right things that lead to the right daily behaviors that ultimately deliver the right results for an organization. And then that's the train of thought, right? And so what we've provided is we co-create with our customers the talk track that if you as a COO or SVP were everywhere, what would you want everyone talking about today? Let's codify that, put it into a structure for now frontline leaders, managers to adhere to. And as they execute those prompts, as they get the feedback from their people, as they recognize individuals, all those things are being fed back into the system, and people have wide-scale visibility and transparency to the conversations that are happening, not because of Big Brother or a big hammer, but because we need to know what's happening at the front lines of our organizations, because that's where the magic happens.
Absolutely. And in my experience, what I've typically seen is you find, and every organization has it where they get a frontline service employee who's phenomenal. They contribute, they figure it out. They're responsible for whatever reason. They're just a really great contributor in that role. And because they're good at that role, they automatically get promoted to, they get put in a leadership position where maybe they haven't demonstrated any leadership ability whatsoever, but they were a really great, individual contributor. And so it's well, if you're good at that, then you must be good at leading. And what we've seen and what I've observed is it's just not always the case. And they'll get in that role and they're like, hey, I'm a really good contributor. Please tell me what exactly am I supposed to be doing here? And how am I supposed to be doing it? And it's different and it can be frustrating. I think many of them are like, this leadership stuff, this manager stuff, I don't know if I want to be a manager. And so that's fascinating. So Unisyn is codifying kind of that, if you could have the CEO leading that daily huddle across all your organizations, this is what Unisyn does.
Yeah, but then it's even more than that. It's okay, that has to happen. But then there's all the back-end data that you can take from that is just game-changing for a service organization, right?
There's data?
So you look at, Yeah, right. Data. Who wants data? Everyone wants data, right? So
Everybody
I
wants
know the
data.
right conversation happened. I know the right conversation happened. I know it happened at the right time. I know who was involved. I know who was recognized. I know what ideas my team have. First of all, that's freaking brilliant because I have no idea what those things are happening right now at scale with my 2,000 employees, 200,000 employees, whatever it may be. But then, who are the most engaged employees? Who are the people who are bringing the most ideas? Who are the people who are bringing the most, who are being recognized the most? They're probably the leaders of tomorrow. They're most engaged. They're the most bought in. They're the most purposeful. Who are the people, conversely, who are not bringing their ideas, who are not being recognized? Those are probably people who we're going to lose, frankly. We talked about, the basic human needs earlier and being connected, loving who I'm with, loving that I do what I do, loving how I do it, being loved by others. Something's missing here because they're not really getting involved. And so there's all the data we can pull from this is monumental because not only does it not exist in service organizations now, it certainly doesn't exist in real time. We're relying on annual surveys at best, or spot surveys, and it's not personal enough, right? Like I have no connection to what's happening at the front lines of my organization and the conversations that are actually happening. I'm usually relying on a manager's, director's, SVP to tell the CEO what's actually happening, and every step along the way, it's getting blurry and blurrier and blurrier because everyone wants to make it look sexy for the person above them because they don't want to get in trouble. So no one really knows what's actually happening. This changes the game on that.
That's awesome. Well, so now let's circle the dots, right? So
Yeah.
if you can track kind of employee engagement as it relates to bringing ideas and being part of the team and contributing to the goals and objectives of the team, how does that connect and inspire the millennial, the Gen Z employee?
Well, again, the Gen Z and millennial employee have grown up with social media in their hand, right? For the most part. Yeah, okay. And the older millennials didn't, but they got it pretty quick. Gen Zs for sure have grown up with it in their hand, and Gen Alpha around the corner will certainly have done so. And so if you look at the trends of social media and why it exists and the reason it's so addictive it's because we're all longing for validation. We're all longing to be recognized, noticed, be special. And I think that's the connection piece, right? Like that's where it becomes something that you can take and go, okay, this is where it intersects. You're not just worth something when you get 25 or 250 likes on Instagram. You're worth something because of who you are, and also you're worth something because of what you contribute to our organization. And you don't have to pretend to be someone else in order to be worthwhile. All you have to do is show up and do your best.
Yeah.
And I think there's a strong connection piece between what we desperately want as humans and what's missing in a lot of employers.
That's awesome. Now, I'd say in addition to that, I think that these generations, millennials, Gen Z, they want to do meaningful work. They want to contribute. They want to make impact and change. They don't want to just be part of a system that, just status quo. When they come to a job, they have big desires of like making a difference. And I think, empowering them in how they go about their day and how about they go about their job, even if they're a freshman working in the college campus dining facility, even if they're washing trays, whatever it may be, like finding ways to empower and to bring that out creates that connection and that enthusiasm that you see with this younger generation. And when you hit that, I think they will exceed far and away any expectations you have about what your company vision may be and what experience you're trying to provide to that end user. They will redefine that in meaningful and very profitable, helpful ways.
It's a great point, and thank you for bringing that up. I think of Ben and Jerry's. You don't have to agree, for example, with everything an organization's about to appreciate that they have owned who they are.
Yeah.
So no matter what side of the aisle you're on, what you believe about, various things that Ben and Jerry's is all about, you know who they are. You know what they're about, and they're going to attract a certain type of employee, and specifically a lot of Gen Z and millennial employees who are all about voting rights, racial justice, LGBTQ rights, Climate justice, campaign finance reform. This is all from their website. And on the top of their website, it says, we believe that business has a responsibility and unique opportunity to be a powerful lever of change in the world. We can use traditional and contemporary business tools to drive systemic, progressive social change by advancing the strategies with larger movements that deal with these issues, such as climate justice and social equity. And I only bring that up to say there is no question what Ben & Jerry's is about. And so if you're about what we're about, you're going to love working here, right? And I think one of the challenges is that, to your point, we want to be part of that. We want to be part of a bigger picture and drive those changes ourselves. But a lot of organizations still haven't quite concisely written out what they're all about. So that you get a training, an HR person onboarding someone, or a director of whatever onboarding a new employee in their region. What are we about? I don't know. Just go do your job, right?
Yeah.
And we're missing that element that people really gravitate to.
Let's as we kind of circle back everything together here. There's two scenarios here. Let's say I'm a new manager.
Yeah.
And maybe I've got a team that's motivated. Who knows where they're at? But me as a manager, I want to be a leader. How do I start? And at the same time, let's say I've been in the space. I'm a executive director at a campus. Been doing this for 30 years. Seen the highs and the lows. Been through it all. Still have a couple years, but really wanting to invigorate my team. Where do I start? I mean, do I just jump in and start doing a daily huddle? Do I need to go out, take some time to find my purpose, my values, and be articulate there? Like, what advice do you have for someone who wants to get started today to do a better job in leading frontline employees?
So for the first one, the manager, the new manager looking to get started on the right foot. Huddles are a critical daily activity, but I would say the first thing you start with is find a mentor. Find the person who you want to be and ask them if you could learn from them.
Cool.
Chart out. And a lot of people, myself included, at different points in my life, haven't really spent enough time thinking about who's the person I want to be. But we do know the person that impacted us a lot. The name of that 5th grade school teacher who we remember just loved us well. That, Sunday school teacher at church who was always there for you. That college professor who took you under his wing, her wing, and made you feel like you could do anything. There are these people who rise up in our lives and we go, I respected and loved that person. Okay, so what are those behaviors that they embodied that you want to be like and you want to exude yourself? And then how can you go find someone? Maybe it is one of those people who I just mentioned and you still are connected to them. Maybe they're older, wiser friends, relatives, but find someone who you want to be like and learn from them on how you can manifest those behaviors yourself. And then for those older generation who are, those executive directors, VPs, SVPs, CEOs, owners who've been there, done that, be that mentor, right? Like the only way to change what happens in our organizations is to connect personally, intimately with other people and show them the way. And we can't abdicate that role and give it to someone else. It's like, well, I want to create culture change in my organization. That's my SVPs, directors, regional managers, supervisors' job. Yeah. No. It's yours, right? And you have to lead from the front strongly. And if you're not getting pushed back, you're probably not leading strong enough.
Mm-hmm. I love it. I'm curious, the dream manager position. I think to some extent, maybe everyone needs to have that as part of their creed and their go-to, especially with employees that they're, maybe they find themselves working more closely with, or that report to them and they have a more direct, ongoing relationship. Is that right? I mean, what percentage, how important is it as a leader and a manager to understand the goals, the dreams, the purpose of some of my closest employees? Do I have to have that connection?
I think you do.
Yeah.
That's not the answer people are going to want to hear because it's easier not to. But how on earth do you motivate someone if you don't know what motivates them?
Yeah.
How on earth do you encourage someone if you don't know how they best feel encouraged? Right? And so it demonstrates the need, again, back to what we started with. People need to love those they do work with, and they need to be and they need to be loved by those people. How do you feel loved by anybody if you don't actually know who they are?
Yeah.
And so I think you do have to invest in that. And no matter how many direct employees that is, figure out a way and operationalize it, make it part of your DNA, of the fabric of what you do, baked into your life. Because if you don't, you're going to have the same problems and challenges that you already do now.
Yeah. That's really good. Well, Joel Onyshuk, fantastic conversation. We got to do this again. As we leave, is there any closing thoughts, anything we didn't hit on that you want to make sure that we take away?
I think we said a lot of it. I mean, this is something I'm really passionate about.
Yeah.
I've got a talk coming up in April that I'm giving to a college, and the title is Vulnerability Begets Vulnerability. I think I shared that with you before. Mm-hmm. And, I think that's where we got to start as leaders. We got to be vulnerable. We got to know ourselves. We got to be aware of who we are, and then we need to lead out of strength from that authentic place and be vulnerable. And when we're vulnerable, and we are authentically ourselves, and we lead from that place, it builds trust, empowers others, creates better self-awareness of ourselves. It unlocks innovation, creativity from our teams. It demonstrates empathy, and it enables us to be in a position to build those strong relationships. So as you go, if you're listening, and as you try to change the culture of your teams, do it from a place of vulnerability and authenticity. No, you don't have to have all the answers, but do it as best you can.
Well, Joel, thank you very much. You're kind of walking into this last one here. Vulnerability begets vulnerability. People have been watching. If you're watching this, you'll notice behind Joel is a piano. You do love playing music on the piano. Would you mind giving us maybe a 30-second little insight into the musical capabilities that you bring?
Are you asking me to play piano for you right now?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, I've never done this before for anybody on a podcast, but I'll play you a little something I've been working on. I've been writing a bit and letting my emotions come out. And I've been more contemplative recently, been more kind of inward in my thoughts, which is pretty rare because I'm a pretty vocal, extroverted dude. So here's what's kind of come out of that process. I'll give you 30 seconds. Hold on.
I love it.
Goes on for a while longer and repeats some things, and there's some variations, but that's something I've been working on for a little bit.
That was incredible, Joe. That was fantastic.
Oh, thank you.
What a player. Thank you today for bringing your whole self, opening up, sharing these things. If people want to learn more about you, Joel, and about your organization, we'll drop the links, contact information in the show notes, your social profiles. Joel, thank you so much, man. It's been fantastic having you today. Just a true pleasure. We can't wait to get back together again and share more of our learnings.
Anytime you want, I'm here. It's been a blast. It's been a pleasure. Thank you for the opportunity.
All right. Well, to all our audience, thank you for joining us today. Joel Onyshuk, Unisyn, fantastic. Check him out. Can't endorse it enough. Incredible thought leader on motivating, driving teams and performance. Wonderful stuff. And we will look forward to speaking with everyone again next week. Thank you.